That morning, Mr. Thon woke up early. He sat by the window, gazing out with dreamy eyes as the first rays of sunlight crept through the trees in front of his house. His hair was white, and although age had dimmed his sight, his eyes still held the unwavering resolve of a man who had lived more than 70 years. Mr. Thon had worked tirelessly all his life, starting as a poor country boy and eventually becoming the pillar of his family. He supported them in the cramped little house where they lived for nearly half his life. Though small and old, the house was filled with memories. It was the place where he and his late wife raised their only son, Huang. But now, that house was his alone. His wife had passed away a few years ago, and Huang, now a successful businessman, lived in a big city far from home. Today, however, was special. Mr. Thon had decided to fulfill a dream he thought he would never realize in his lifetime: to buy a Rolls-Royce motorbike. The thought stirred a mix of nervousness and emotion within him, not because he wanted to show off, but because that motorbike symbolized everything he had overcome. It represented his years of hard work, his perseverance through adversity, and the success of the son he had sacrificed everything to build. Looking down at his old, worn-out coat, Mr. Thon remembered his son's words. Despite the tears and sweat it had endured over the years, the coat was kept spotless as a cherished reminder. It was a gift from Huang on the first day his son received his salary. Smiling quietly, Mr. Thon remembered the day when Huang had said, "Dad, don't save anymore. You've given your whole life for me. Reward yourself. Don't worry about what anyone thinks." Huang had encouraged him to choose anything he wanted. "What do you want, Dad?" he had asked, and Mr. Thon had never hesitated when answering. "You deserve the best, Dad," Huang had said, placing a felt hat on his father's head before leaving. The small alley outside still glistened from the rain the night before, but Mr. Thon's steps were slow yet steady. His back remained straight, and with each step, he exuded the resilience of someone who had weathered many storms. He called a taxi, asking the driver to take him to the Rolls-Royce showroom in the city center. The young driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror, his curiosity evident. "Do you really want to see a Rolls-Royce?" he asked, hesitating. Mr. Thon's response was calm but firm. "Yes, I intend to buy one." The driver was taken aback, but didn't question further. When the taxi arrived at the showroom, Mr. Thon stepped out and looked up at the massive glass building before him. It felt like entering a completely different world. Inside, the supercars sparkled under the lights, each one more magnificent than the last. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had come this far. Nothing could make him falter now. With his hands, worn but still strong, he pushed open the large glass door. As he entered, the luxurious surroundings almost overwhelmed him. The lobby glimmered with reflections from expensive cars that illuminated the marble floors. Mr. Thon blinked slightly. Yet, amidst all the luxury, his mind was flooded with memories of the long, hard years that had brought him to this moment. He remembered his childhood, born into a poor farming family in a remote village. His parents worked endlessly, yet there was never enough to eat. He recalled the days of running barefoot down the village roads, dreaming of a full meal of meat and fish. His hands, now calloused and rough, bore the marks of years spent working the fields alongside his parents. When he grew older, Mr. Thon left his village with the hope of finding a better life in the city. But the urban world turned out to be even harsher than he had imagined. He worked tirelessly at many jobs to make a living, first as a porter, then as a truck mechanic, despite the hardships his job entailed. With little pay and immense effort, he constantly reminded himself to persevere, The years were a battle, not only against poverty, but also against the contempt of others. The years were a battle, not only against poverty, but also against the contempt of others. He still remembers the disdainful looks from wealthy managers and customers who regarded him as nothing more than a lowly employee. There was a time he was even kicked out of a restaurant for not fitting in. He didn't argue or get angry. He simply turned and left. But the sting of those cold words stayed with him. When he got married, Mr. Than realized that he had to work even harder for the sake of his son. All he hoped for was a future where his son would not have to endure the same suffering and disrespect he had. Yet, he knew that achieving this dream would require unimaginable sacrifices. From dawn until late into the night, he worked through rain, sun, and illness. He remembers cold nights spent at the auto repair shop, his hands sore and covered in grease, just to earn enough to pay for his son's tuition. There were times when his only meal was dry bread and filtered water, small savings used to buy books for Huang. The moment that stays with him most vividly was when his son passed the entrance exam to a prestigious university. Huang's acceptance letter arrived, and his face lit up like the sun, even though he was exhausted after a long day's work. His son's radiant smile made all of Mr. Than's struggles fade away. He patted Huang on the shoulder and told him, "I promise you won't have to suffer like I did." And Mr. Than kept that promise, never once allowing himself to wallow in sorrow. Although life had a price, he was accustomed to it. He had learned to endure being looked down upon by wealthy people who failed to understand that behind the humble car mechanic was a father willing to sacrifice everything for his son's bright future. He had no time for self-pity. He channeled all his energy into a single goal: the success of his son. As Huang grew and achieved great accomplishments, Mr. Than was proud, but never once considered indulging in the luxuries his son offered. When Huang suggested buying him a big house or a luxury car, he always refused, saying, "I'm used to living simply." Yet, deep down, he secretly dreamed of owning a luxury car, just like the ones driven by the rich people he had once served. And today, he decided to fulfill that dream for himself. This wasn't about flaunting wealth or status. It was a symbol of perseverance, a way to honor the struggles he had endured. A Rolls-Royce wasn't just a car. It was a testament to the dignity and love he had poured into his family. Sitting in the small but neat living room of his old house, Mr. Than, now over 70 years old, with rough hands and white hair, looked at his son, Huang, who stood before him in a suit, his face beaming with pride, though mixed with a touch of hesitation. Huang had just returned from a long business trip. He looked at his father with eyes filled with love and gratitude. Despite being the CEO of a large corporation and able to buy whatever he wanted, Huang knew that his success was built on the silent sacrifices of his father. His voice was gentle but firm as he spoke. "Dad, I want you to do one thing for yourself. All your life, you've sacrificed for me. Now, it's your turn. It's time for you to think about your own happiness." Mr. Than smiled kindly and shook his head. "I'm used to living simply, son. I have you, and your success makes me happy. That's enough for me. I don't need anything." But see Huang, he doesn't give up. "I know my father always thinks of others before himself, but this time, I'm determined to change that mindset, Dad. Do you remember last time when you said you liked the Rolls-Royce? Have you looked at it? If you really like it, we can buy it right now." Mr. Than was taken aback by the suggestion. In a previous conversation, he had casually mentioned being impressed by the luxury and powerful presence of the Rolls-Royce he saw on television. But he didn't actually think that dream could ever become a reality. When Huang brought it up, Mr. Thon quickly waved his hand dismissively, saying, "It's too expensive, Huang. How can we dare to dream about something like that? You don't need such luxuries." Huang looked at his father with determined eyes. "Dad," he said, "this isn't just a car. It's a symbol of everything you've accomplished. It's your reward for all the sacrifices you've made." Mr. Thon paused. Huang's words resonated with him deeply. He had given his whole life to his family. Now, it was time for him to receive something back. "For yourself, you deserve it," Huang continued. "But more than that, I want you to step out from the shadow of your life's struggles. You've worked so hard, and it's time for you to enjoy the fruits of your labor." Mr. Thon fell silent. The words struck a chord, stirring memories of the years of hardship. He remembered the small dreams he had put aside, dedicating his life to raising his son. To him, the Rolls-Royce was not just a car. It was a symbol of pride, a testament to the value of his life's work. Huang's voice softened with warmth. "Dad, I've always admired you. You didn't just give me life. You taught me patience, resilience, and how to overcome every obstacle. And now, I want you to be proud of yourself. I want you to walk into that Rolls-Royce like a winner." Mr. Thon's heart trembled. He didn't want to admit it, but deep down, he longed for that moment. To stand tall among the lights, to feel the respect he had always given others. "Will we do this together?" Huang asked. "Not because of the money, but because you deserve it." For the first time in his life, Mr. Thon allowed himself to dream, not just for his family, but for himself. Huang's sincere encouragement was all he needed to feel something new: joy, pride, and determination. It wasn't just about the car. It was about recognizing his worth. That day, as they arrived at the Rolls-Royce showroom, Mr. Thon felt the weight of a lifetime of sacrifices lift off his shoulders. The building gleamed in the morning light. The Rolls-Royce stood proudly, a symbol of luxury and class, in the center of the city. Each architectural line was sleek and sophisticated, exuding an air of wealth and success. The automatic glass door, framed in gold, was like the entrance to another world. The moment he stepped inside, he was enveloped in a sense of calm. Behind the glass, the Rolls-Royces sat under soft lighting, each one a masterpiece. Their unique curves and glossy paint gleamed like works of art, waiting for someone worthy to claim them. As Mr. Thon stood there, he felt a shift in the atmosphere. The space was quiet, almost sacred. His footsteps echoed on the marble floors, and the faint scent of agarwood and orchids filled the air, creating a feeling of peace, yet aloofness. Luxury with a sense of detachment. The showroom was designed with meticulous attention to detail. The ivory white marble reflected the shining Rolls-Royces displayed on the floor, each placed on a raised platform, giving customers the opportunity to admire them from every angle. The spotlight highlighted every curve, every perfection, making the cars look like kings, resting in their own domain. Large LED screens displayed videos showcasing the craftsmanship behind each Rolls-Royce, how the wooden frame was hand-shaped and the leather seats sewn by skilled artisans in pristine white uniforms. The craftsmanship was so precise, so deliberate, that it made customers appreciate the artistic value of each car even more. Nearby, a simple yet modern reception counter gleamed with a dark wood finish. The Rolls-Royce logo was engraved in the center, a reminder of the brand's elegance and the power that came with owning one. Mr. Thon stood there, a man who had lived his life in the shadows, now facing his own reflection in the cars before him. With Huang by his side, for the first time in years, he was ready to take the step towards something truly extraordinary. Behind the counter, a young female employee in an elegant black uniform sits upright. Her eyes glance briefly at Mr. Thon as he enters the showroom, before quickly returning to the computer screen in front of her. The VIP area, separated by glass panels, offers a private space with high-quality leather sofas, a pay table, and a large screen displaying car customization options. Everything here is designed to cater to wealthy special clients for whom money is no object. Mr. Thon walks slowly through the display area, his eyes catching sight of the mysterious black Rolls-Royce Phantom parked in the center. The car stands majestically, a perfect blend of luxury and power, like a statue of honor. For a man who has lived over 70 years, Mr. Thon has never been this close to such a car. The smooth lines of the car's body, the Spirit of Ecstasy emblem on the hood, a small human figure with wings spread, sparkle in the light. This is the very symbol of the success and class he had only ever witnessed from afar. Yet, despite the grandeur surrounding him, Mr. Thon's steps slow as he notices some employees from the back room glancing at him curiously, mixed with doubt. He feels out of place, aware of how he looks, his simple clothes, worn shoes, and aged appearance. The staff members accustomed to the wealthy clientele who frequent this place probably see him as an outsider. But Mr. Thon doesn't care. He stands tall, determined. He is not here to hesitate or feel ashamed. He is here because of a lifelong dream, a dream he knows he deserves. In the luxury of this space, he is no longer the man from humble beginnings. He is someone with self-respect, stepping in to write his own story. Approaching the reception counter, he meets Thao, the young female employee in the black suit. The small Rolls-Royce logo is embroidered on her lapel, her hair neatly tied up, and her makeup light. She looks at him, judging him silently, her eyes scanning him from head to toe. His old faded coat, worn-out shoes, and calloused hands appear to her as out of place as the man himself. In a polite but somewhat cold voice, Thao greets him. "Hello, how can I help you?" Mr. Thon smiles kindly, oblivious to the chill in her tone. "I'd like to take a look at the Rolls-Royce Phantom." At the mention of the Phantom, Thao frowns. She knows this is the highest-end model from Rolls-Royce, starting at tens of billions of Vietnamese dong. The customization options only add to the price. She can't help but doubt if this elderly man truly understands the car's value. "Do you know the price of the Phantom?" Thao asks, with a tone that carries a hint of skepticism. Mr. Thon remains calm, undeterred by her attitude. "I know. I've already researched it. I want to see the car in person." Thao offers a faint smile, her politeness laced with a touch of condescension. "Mr. Rolls-Royce Phantom isn't a car just anyone can afford. It's a car for special customers. Are you sure you want to buy it?" Her words, though indirect, carry a clear message. He doesn't belong here. Mr. Thon pauses, feeling the sting of her gaze. He's no stranger to judgment or sarcastic remarks. He's faced them all his life. Yet, this moment still stings, though he doesn't let it show. He looks straight into Thao's eyes, his voice calm, yet firm. "I didn't come here to joke around. I've worked all my life and I can afford to buy this car. Can you show it to me?" Thao is momentarily stunned by the determination in his eyes. Her posture relaxes, and she steps back, crossing her arms over her chest. "Well," she says, still with a hint of reluctance, "our showroom doesn't organize tours for non-serious customers. These cars aren't just expensive, they're symbols of status." She pauses, then adds, If you want to see the car, I'm afraid we'll need to verify your financial ability. Her words cut into Mr. Than's self-esteem, but he maintains his composure. He takes a deep breath, suppressing the hurt that threatens to surface. I just want to see the car I intend to buy, he replies quietly but firmly. I don't need anyone to judge me based on my appearance. Thao smirks, her smile slightly mocking. Sir, appearance is important, especially with a brand like Rolls-Royce. But if you really want, I can call the manager to handle this. Before Mr. Than can respond, Thao turns and walks away briskly toward the management office, leaving him standing in the middle of the showroom, cold, stark, and overwhelmingly luxurious. For a moment, Mr. Than feels the weight of exclusion. He doesn't belong here, not because of his financial capability, but because of the judgmental eyes and prejudices he has encountered all his life. But this time, he is not going to leave quietly. He stands there, steady as ever, determined not to let them see him as less than anyone else. He knows he has earned this moment. His resolve only strengthens as he waits. Thao returns, her expression half reluctant, half condescending. Instead of bringing the manager, she continues testing his patience with another remark. Sir, I'm afraid this is not a place for just browsing, she says, her voice laced with sarcasm. Rolls-Royce cars like the Phantom aren't merely transportation. They are symbols of class. Only those who truly understand them can afford to own one. Mr. Than meets her eyes, his gaze unwavering. He has endured too much in life to let this moment define him. He wavered, even though he was accustomed to being belittled. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that his self-esteem was being challenged. Do you think I came here to joke? He asked, his voice low yet sharp. I've lived for over 70 years. I don't need anyone to teach me about my worth or level. I came here because I want to buy a Rolls-Royce Phantom, not to listen to reviews about myself. Thao raised her eyebrows slightly, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. She crossed her arms and glanced down at her worn shoes before looking up at his jacket. Sir, she said coolly, not everyone can afford a Rolls-Royce. The Phantom you're talking about has a starting price of over 40 billion Vietnamese dong, not to mention the cost of customization. Do you know that? Mr. Than nodded, his calm demeanor betraying a hint of fatigue from the girl's attitude. I know, he replied. I researched carefully before coming here. If you're not going to help, then call someone else. I don't want to waste time. Thao smiled mockingly and bent over the desk, pretending to be busy with some notepads. Sir, she said with a cool air, in this room, we usually only serve truly potential customers. If you cannot prove your financial capability, I'm afraid I won't be able to assist you further. Her words struck like an alarm bell in Mr. Than's heart. He had encountered many disdainful glances in his life, but this girl's attitude still stung. He looked at her, not with anger, but with a deep sense of pity for her narrow worldview. Do you judge people solely by their appearance? He asked in a calm voice, though a sharp edge lingered in his words. Wealth isn't just about the clothes people wear or the shoes they walk in. Those things are only skin deep. Thao smirked, her face still radiating a sense of superiority. Sir, I'm not saying that appearance is everything, but customers here usually don't walk in wearing clothes like yours. Mr. Than sighed softly, his eyes drifting to the distance, as though the years of being looked down upon flashed before him. He didn't come here to argue, but he couldn't remain silent when his dignity was trampled on. She's still young, he said, in a voice both light and heavy, and doesn't understand the value of hard work. I've lived a life of honest labor, and I raised my son to be successful without needing anyone's approval or respect. Today, I came here to buy a car I want, not to hear judgments." For a moment, Thao was taken aback by the firmness in his words, but she wasn't ready to abandon her sarcastic attitude just yet. "Sir," she continued, "if you truly want to buy, I'm afraid we need financial proof. We can't allow just anyone to waste our time." Her words were like a knife slicing into his pride. Mr. Thon didn't answer immediately. He simply looked at her with a mix of sadness and resolve in his eyes. "You don't need to test my abilities," he said slowly, his voice steady. "I don't have to prove anything to anyone. If you're not going to help, let me speak with your manager." Thao hadn't expected Mr. Thon to respond so calmly and with such determination. Before she could reply, the door opened and a familiar figure stepped inside. Mr. Thon's son, dressed in a luxurious suit, exuding an air of authority. Huang walked directly toward his father. His eyes quickly scanned Thao before settling on Mr. Thon's face, where he noticed the hurt his father had been trying to conceal. Without asking about what had just occurred, Huang knew it wasn't something to be overlooked. He moved with purpose, his presence commanding the room. His sharp stride and cold, confident gaze made everyone in the showroom stop and take notice. People turned to look at him. His aura as a successful, high-powered businessman immediately captured the attention of everyone around him. His eyes locked on his father, the man who had spent his life sacrificing for him. Huang's brow furrowed slightly. Despite his father's attempt to maintain composure, he could still see the fatigue and sadness in his eyes. Huang walked swiftly toward him, his voice sharp and resonant. "Dad," he said, "what's going on? Why don't you look happy?" Mr. Thon glanced up at his son, shaking his head gently, trying to mask his pain. "It's nothing," he said, "just a small misunderstanding." But Huang wasn't easily convinced. He turned his steely gaze toward Thao, his eyes like daggers. "You're the one serving my father, right? He came here to see the car. Can you explain why he wasn't treated well?" Thao froze, her face draining of color, as she realized that the man before her was no ordinary customer. His sharp suit and commanding presence oozed power and status. Hesitation crept in as she stammered. "I just asked him a few questions to verify that he was truly interested." Huang cut her off, his voice deep and firm. "My father came in here to see the Rolls-Royce Phantom, a car he wants to buy. And you thought it was your job to judge him based on his appearance." Everything went eerily silent. An employee, V, began to pay closer attention to the conversation, and a nearby customer glanced over with curiosity. Thao lowered her head, trying to explain. "I didn't mean it like that. I just thought he didn't look like the typical customer we serve. It's not what I meant." But her words only made Huang more angry. He smiled faintly, stepping closer to her. Contrary to what she might have believed, Huang's father didn't need to wear branded suits or expensive shoes to be deemed worthy of entering. "How do you know who he is?" Huang said coldly. "He's the man who worked his entire life to raise me, who taught me the right way to live. He's the reason I'm standing here today, and he doesn't need any of you to judge his worth." He paused for a moment, eyes sharp. "So, is it because he looks different that you would treat him this way?" Thao faltered, her face pale. I didn't know. I'm sorry." At that moment, Mr. Khan, the showroom manager, emerged after hearing the commotion. He was a well-dressed, middle-aged man in a gray suit. When he saw Huang, he immediately recognized the important guest and greeted him with respect. "Huang, It's a pleasure to meet you here. What seems to be the problem? Huang turned to face Mr. Khan, his gaze unwavering. There is a problem, and it's about how your staff treated my father. Mr. Khan took a quick glance at Mr. Than, Huang's father, noticing the stark contrast between his simple appearance and his dignified posture. Huang's clear and serious tone made it evident that this wasn't just about a misunderstanding. I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience caused, Mr. Khan said, trying to calm the situation. Our staff may have misunderstood, and I personally pledge to ensure that you have the best experience here. But Huang wasn't satisfied with just an apology. His voice grew colder as he repeated, "Apologies don't solve the problem. If my father were not my father, would you still be standing here apologizing? How did your staff treat him before I arrived? Do your staff believe that customers only deserve respect when they wear expensive clothes?" Mr. Khan, slightly taken aback, tried to maintain his composure. "I understand your frustration, Huang. We will address this internally to ensure that something like this will not happen again." But Huang was still not satisfied. He looked over at the staff member who had been disrespectful and saw that the man still avoided looking directly at him. "Today, my father came here to fulfill a lifelong dream, and instead of respect, he was treated with disdain. Do you think a brand like Rolls-Royce would maintain its reputation if it continued to treat customers like this?" Mr. Than, Huang's father, placed a hand on his son's shoulder. His voice was quiet, but full of conviction. "It's all right, son. We don't need the car. I've lived long enough to know that true respect doesn't come from luxury items." Mr. Than's words helped calm Huang's anger, but he still couldn't let the situation slide easily. Turning to Mr. Khan, he said in a firm tone, "I won't buy a car here today, not because I can't afford it, but because I won't let my father be treated like this due to shallow prejudices." "Good luck with your future business," Huang added as he took his father's hand. They walked out of the showroom, leaving behind a stunned silence. The glass doors closed automatically behind them, but Huang's words still lingered in the air, echoing in the luxurious space. Class isn't something shown by appearance, but by the way we treat others. As they stepped outside, Huang and his father made their way to the electric taxi waiting for them. But as they were about to get in, Huang's phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the screen. It was Mr. Khan calling. Huang frowned, but answered the call. "Hello, I'm listening." On the other end, Mr. Khan's voice was apologetic and urgent. "Huang, I'm very sorry for what happened today. After revisiting the incident, I realized that the behavior of our staff was completely unforgivable. I hope you and your father can return so we can correct this mistake." Mr. Than, however, wasn't moved. "I don't think we need to go back. My father was already disappointed enough by the way we were treated." Mr. Khan quickly responded, "I understand, but this isn't just about selling a car. It's about honor and responsibility, ours. We want to show that we understand how to respect people, and your father is a person worthy of respect." Huang paused and then hung up the phone. He looked at his father, who smiled slightly, a calm but knowing expression on his face. "They're trying to fix their mistake, but we don't need to return there." Mr. Than chuckled softly, his tone warm yet firm. "True respect doesn't come from arguing or trying to win. It comes from how we maintain our dignity and self-respect, no matter how others see us." Huang's face softened, and he looked at his father with admiration. "I'm still proud, Dad, because today we walked into that showroom with our heads held high." As they prepared to leave in the electric taxi, Huang's heart was still heavy, But he knew that true respect was about more than just appearances. It was about staying true to your values, no matter the situation. Huang nodded, but after a moment of thought, he replied, "No, Father. I think you should go back. Not because they are worthy, but because you are. You deserve to enter that place with the respect you have always deserved. We will not let anyone's prejudices stop us." Father had achieved what he wanted. Mr. Than was silent, his son's words lingering in the air. After a pause, he nodded thoughtfully. The next day, as Mr. Than and Huang returned to the showroom, everything had changed. The atmosphere was entirely different. Mr. Khan stood waiting, bowing with utmost respect. "Dear Mr. Huang, on behalf of everyone, I offer our most sincere apologies. We made a grave mistake in judging you based on your appearance." Mr. Than didn't say a word, only nodding slightly. His eyes, however, were calm, no longer bearing the hurt they once did. Just a day before, the showroom staff had treated him with disdain, their eyes full of judgment. But now, things were different. Behind her pale face, a staff member stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Sir, I am truly sorry for my behavior. I allowed prejudice to cloud the way I treated you. I hope you can forgive me." Mr. Than studied her for a moment, then spoke softly. "You are still young. You need to understand that a person is not defined by their appearance or the money they wear. What defines a person's worth is their actions, how they live and contribute. I hope you remember this lesson." Mr. Khan personally led Mr. Than and Huang to Area B, where a Rolls-Royce Phantom sat, a sleek black symbol of pride and class. The spirit of ecstasy gleamed on the hood, a testament to wealth and success. "This is the car you were interested in. We will assist you in personalizing every detail as you wish and ensure that we serve you with the utmost respect," Mr. Khan said. Mr. Than walked closer, his hand grazing the cool surface of the car. In that moment, all the hurt, all the disdain he had endured, seemed to vanish. His son's words echoed in his mind. This was not just a car, but a symbol of what they had overcome together: pride, resilience, and tenacity. Looking at his father's bright smile, Huang knew that this moment was not just about the car. It was about honoring the sacrifices of a father who had endured so much for the family. He deserved this, and more. The best part of that day was not just the Rolls-Royce Phantom that they left the showroom with. It was the respect Mr. Than had earned. The car was a symbol of a father's strength and resilience, and it wasn't just about luxury. It was about overcoming prejudice and affirming his own value. When Mr. Than and Huang returned home, they were not just returning with a luxury car. They were returning with pride. Pride in themselves, pride in their journey, and pride in their identity. Huang later posted a heartfelt message on social media. He recounted the story of his father, a man who had spent his life working tirelessly and sacrificing so much. His father had entered a luxury showroom to fulfill a dream, only to be judged by his appearance. Huang wrote, "My father doesn't need a Rolls-Royce to prove his worth, but I want the world to know that people like my father deserve respect. His effort, sacrifice, and tenacity are the reasons I am where I am today." Class isn't about appearance or wealth. It's about how we treat others. I hope this story serves as a lesson to all of us. Huang's post quickly went viral, garnering hundreds of thousands of likes and shares. People were moved by his steadfastness and his gratitude toward his father. The comments poured in, calling his father an unsung hero, a man deserving of the utmost respect. It was a big lesson for all, especially brands. Never judge a person by their appearance. A few days later, the Rolls-Royce brand issued a public apology to Mr. Thon and pledged to improve their customer service. Mr. Khan, the showroom manager, personally sent a handwritten letter to Mr. Thon's home. In it, he expressed his regret and gratitude for the valuable lesson Mr. Thon had taught them. Your strength and self-respect are a great lesson to us. Your story has changed how we view every customer. We hope you'll give us another chance to serve you in the best way possible. Despite the attention, Mr. Thon continued living his simple life. But now, the Rolls-Royce Phantom was more than just a car to him. It was a symbol of the self-esteem he had fought so hard to preserve throughout his life. Often, Mr. Thon would sit in the car and gaze out the window, reflecting on the journey. He would teach his children that true wealth is not measured by what you own, but by how you live and how you respect others and yourself. No matter how successful Huang became, he always remembered the lessons his father had imparted. He would often share this story with others, not just to remind himself, but to inspire many others along the way. One afternoon, Huang invited his father to join him for a test drive in the Rolls-Royce. As they cruised down the road, a golden beam of sunlight streamed through the car's glass window. Mr. Thon glanced at his son and gave a small, knowing smile. "You know," he said softly, "I don't need this. This car, it's just a thing. The real pride of my life is you. You are my greatest achievement." Huang, feeling a wave of emotion, turned to his father, his voice choked with feelings. "No, father. What makes me most proud is being your son." As the car glided smoothly along the tree-lined road, it wasn't just the luxury of the vehicle that stood out. It was the powerful bond between father and son. A bond built on love, self-worth, and the resilience to rise above any challenge or judgment. This moment wasn't just about a car. It was a profound lesson about the true value of people, about what truly lasts beyond material things, the love, the connection, and the pride we have in each other.